Okay, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about my job and about where I work. And so, even though this is not going to be any sort of job offer or any get rich quick scheme, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my job and what I do, and maybe something you'll want to look into if you are looking for a job that is more like a work from home job or a be your own boss job. So, a job like mine might be helpful in your quest if that's what you're looking to do, if you want to live in your van or RV full time. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we do have someone at my current workplace location that is a work from home employee. So, let me talk a little bit about what that entails. And then maybe when you're searching for a job, you can look for a job that's kind of like this one. I work for a company that sells items wholesale. So basically, what that means is we are a supplier of certain items that get sold in stores that are all over the country. So our work from home person, what they do is they are strictly contacted via email. Anytime one of our customers has an issue with a product, they are to send an email to our company and they have to send a photo. So like if they are wanting a refund because what they received was damaged, then they have to send a photo as proof. And they send it to our customer service person who works from home, and then they are able to log into a computer, read the email, and then process the refund based on making sure the photo was provided and there is significant damage, that we will issue them a refund for their purchase. And this is something that, it happens frequent enough that we needed to hire someone full-time to do this sort of thing. So basically, this would be kind of like if you were to look into a job that's something like that, a working from home job that you do several days an hour. One of the most important things you'll need is internet connection. So if you happen to be living in the forest or living in the desert, you need to be able to have internet connection. So you might think, well, that's fine. If I don't have internet connection in my car that I'm working out of, if I'm in a van or an RV, maybe I'll just go to a coffee shop. So keep in mind, this is like several hours of work. So maybe a coffee shop doesn't want you sitting there for several hours. So you might want to look into going to other places like a public library. They might be more open to you having someone sitting there for a few hours working on their computer. But that is something to keep in mind. So if you do not have internet service easily accessible in your vehicle that you're living out of, then you need to find a place with internet service. So that's where I'm going to talk about another thing, is these shared office spaces. Now, I know maybe this is kind of like a big thing in Seattle, but there's people who do have work from home positions, but maybe they don't really actually want to work from home because they have a family or they have lots of pets that are making a commotion in the house, barking. They just want to go somewhere separate, but they don't want to actually like rent an office. So they have these shared workspaces where you can go and you basically pay a fee to have a workspace, like a cubicle or maybe your own private room, and it's extremely affordable. And then that can be a place that you have a desk, you can hook up your computer, and usually they have other services available to you. So like a printer, copier, scanner, and then maybe like a break room with like coffee or something like that. But you have these shared workspaces, and there's all sorts of them all throughout Seattle, but maybe other big cities have them as well. And there's also ones that I've seen called creative workspaces. So this could be something where like maybe you aren't actually like an office job where you need to be sitting at a computer doing like typing and data entry, but maybe you are someone who actually makes crafts and you need your own work studio for that sort of thing, or you paint or you create something that you sell online. I like to keep this in mind because maybe you don't actually have your own office, like you go to a job every day, but if you were to be your own boss, you still want your own workspace to go somewhere and just like sit down and concentrate and work on your work. Whether that be you rent out a little studio that's in one of these shared creative workspaces, or you have your own desk or table, that maybe you come into a big room and there's all these cubicles and maybe you don't have one assigned to you, but you just grab whichever one's open and that you're free to use that. You either pay by the hour or you have a monthly fee to be part of maybe a membership. To go and use this office space This is all stuff you might want to look into if you were considering this sort of lifestyle, that maybe you don't want to be like sitting and typing and working in your car, but you want to actually go and like sit at a desk and do your work. Still, it's considered work from home and you're still getting paid because it's a job, but now in a sense you're your own boss. So this is the part 2 of talking more about my job, because my job in particular, we sell wholesale. Now what does that mean? That also means that people that want to sell our items, you may hear the term drop shipping. So people will go and they'll go on eBay, or they'll go on set up an Amazon seller account or any other website, and then they're basically selling our products. But we're the ones who made the product in the first place. But then these third parties, they come and they purchase the products from us, and then they resell them on these websites. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to purchase the products up front. And this is a little bit how drop shipping works, that you basically have your ad listings online, like eBay. I'll use that as an example. And then when someone actually buys from you, then you would buy from us, and then we ship out the product. And then that's pretty much what a drop shipper is. Now, there's all sorts of different types of drop shipping. You may hear of people who sell t-shirts, or they sell like creative items where they put a design on a coffee cup and they sell those. And basically they pay for a service to do that. They create the product, they create the screen print, the t-shirt, and ship it out to the customer. And then all the drop shipper did was pretty much place a listing online. They don't even have to make the t-shirt, and they basically are just making all the profit. So this is why a company like where I work for, which is a wholesale company that is actually has the items that are being sold, this is why I say it's not a get rich quick scheme. So if you were interested in actually being a drop shipper and you wanted to kind of be your own boss, that the idea is you would set up your own website, or set up sales on eBay, or maybe even open an Amazon account, and then you start selling products. Now, what products are you going to sell? That's where you have to go find the wholesalers that have the product, which is like the company I work for, because we sell a product and it's a very specific product. But there's plenty of other companies out there that might be selling products as well, and you would just be like the middleman, the third party, the person who's actually doing the selling. But really, it's kind of like you're not actually doing any of the work. You're not creating the product. You're not even really shipping it out. All you're doing is you're getting the order from the customer, and then you're placing an order through the wholesaler. Now, if you're like, okay, well, I need more details. I need to know like exactly what wholesaler or exactly what product. And this is why I say I'm just giving you ideas of what you can do to become your own boss. Now, you've probably heard of people doing this sort of thing, like they sell t-shirts online and they say they make like hundreds of dollars, and that's great for them. But that's not really how it works for everyone. So maybe you'd only make like a couple sales a month, not enough to live off of, or maybe you make thousands of sales. You just kind of never know how it's going to work out. And so that's why I say I'm giving you ideas of things you can do to make money. Some people refer to these as side hustles because they're not your main income. But if you can make a little bit of money here and there, that's always great. Making money for less work is great. So the only work you would actually need to be doing is putting ads on eBay or listing things for sale online, and then hoping people buy it. And if it's a good enough product, then the product sells itself. Okay, so this is kind of like another thing that I do as far as I have a job. I work for this wholesale company. But do I have side hustles? Yes, I do. I also sell things online, which is something I've always kind of done just as a hobby, and not really like, oh, I want this to be my business. But I think back in the day, when eBay first came out, obviously if you had just some old junk that you didn't want anymore, you would sell it online. So there's people who, instead of just getting rid of old junk and cleaning out their closet, they actually go to like thrift stores and buy things and then resell it. And then that's their whole job. That could be a job. It could be a job that pays well, but then you're spending all your time like shopping and buying and hoping something sells. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like gambling, because you never know if something's really going to sell. Did you blow your money on something to resell and it doesn't sell? I don't know, but you know, it's a side hustle. It's a way to make money. It's something to sell. Now, if you are a creative person, like I mentioned before, like you like to paint or you make pottery or you do certain things that is creative in some way, there's many websites out there where you can sell your stuff. And then, of course, that means you need to take the time to make those things, those crafty things. Maybe you make your own jewelry, you know, anything like that that you can sell online to make money. Now, are you going to make a ton of money? I really can't promise that. A lot of times you might say, well, it depends on how good the jewelry is. Also, people, they might go and sell at craft fairs, and those craft fairs may only be on the weekend. So clearly it's not a full-time job. You only have that one craft fair, that one weekend to make the big money. And if you don't make any money, then, you know, then I don't know. But also that means you're probably spending weeks and weeks and weeks of making things to sell at the fair. And this is where you might also need, like I said, your own art studio, or you may need to rent out a place to work on those things or to store them somewhere. So if you need a storage unit. And this is where I talk about another thing is that if you're like a handyman and you have a lot of tools, and that's, you know, you're your own boss and you're doing this van life thing, you know, sometimes you're not traveling around with all your tools and all the things you need for your job. You might actually need to work out. You need to maybe rent a workshop, a studio to keep all your tools, or say you're going to be working on carpentry and you've got to cut a bunch of wood and you need table saws and all that. You need those to be somewhere, to store them somewhere, to plug them in somewhere, to actually use them. And then maybe you've got lumber stored up. You need somewhere to like work on sawing and cutting the lumber for whatever project you're going to be doing. And so this is why that if you're living in your car and you want to be your own boss, you might still actually be renting a place. Maybe you're not renting an apartment or a place to live, but you're renting like a storage unit or a work studio or a workshop to work on things. And this is something to keep in mind, because I'm also someone that always likes to hear those stories of what someone did to start from scratch and become successful. You know, sometimes I follow different people on Instagram, and I remember seeing someone that their goal was they wanted to open their own bakery, okay? So, you know, I don't know what kind of training or if they've ever worked in a bakery before, but basically that was their goal. They really wanted their own bakery to sell cupcakes, cookies, whatever. And so what they did is they were kind of doing the whole van life, car life, basically choosing to live in a car and then taking the money that they normally would spend on rent for an apartment and basically putting that rent towards a retail space to, you know, every month paying rent towards where they were going to put their bakery, because of course they had to build it up first and they had to get their business license, and you know, then they had to come in and have inspections to make sure they could cook food there, all of that stuff. But basically, instead of paying rent every month, they were paying money towards their lease on the bakery because that was their goal. And you know, sometimes when you first start a business, you're not really making money right away. You're actually spending money. You're spending money to build up the business. And so for the first year or so, you know, while this person was living in their car, they're paying all their money towards building this dream of a bakery. And then obviously over time, the dream pays off and they were starting to make more of a profit. The business is going well and they could finally, you know, get a home of their own. They didn't have to live in their car anymore. And, you know, obviously people that start their own businesses, you know, you talk about like being a worker, average worker, 40-hour work week. People that are their own owners of a business are usually working like 80 hours a week. They're putting in their hours night and day, and they're not really getting a paycheck. They're not getting much of a payback on it because they're giving, like, as they say, your blood, sweat, and tears into a business. And so that's kind of the story I was following of this lady. She wanted to start a bakery. And so she was living in her car so she could save up all her money and put it towards the bakery. And any money that she normally would have been spending, say pay like $1,000 a month for rent or mortgage or whatever, that was money that she was putting towards this retail space and buying equipment and buying ingredients. And like I said, eventually pays off, and that she was able to get a nice home. She had her own business. She reached her goal, and that's great. And I really hope that that's something that you can do as well. And I'm hoping that any ideas that I've thrown out here will help you with your life path. And thank you for watching.